welcome everybody to Logical, and I'll spare you guys the details of what we do. We do a lot for the legal industry all under this roof in our Los Angeles office, and we've got some other folks kind of scattered throughout the country. If you want more information about what we do, there's a couple of us here, and come back after we're done in the networking and talk to us. But I wanted to, as I was talking with Mary earlier today, planning for the day and thinking about client-driven technology and solutions and what you guys are going to be talking about. I was on the plane yesterday from Los Angeles, and I sat next to one of the chief system engineers from HP. And what this guy does is he goes in and he does these massive multi-million-dollar installs for very large law firms, very large corporations, and solves these major problems. And I'm in tech, and I didn't totally understand what he did. But what my takeaway from it is that even at that level where he's working directly with CIOs and CTOs and highly sophisticated and educated thought leaders and or highly educated people in technology and the CEOs, he said that he struggled with bringing on members of his team that had empathy and compassion and could have a conversation instead of a text message or an email, and could really go in, if they've done a $10 million install at a major organization, and with some empathy, understand their pain points or know when they've made a mistake or done something wrong. And so with today's panel, I thought it was a little bit relevant because we're talking about technology and this big push to remove people from technology, but I feel, and I'm using this as a little bit of soapbox of, we have to be talking to people, we have to understand their needs. And I thought it was a little bit relevant. I was talking to him, even at that level, at the top of the top from technology, they still struggle with really delivering seamless services and understanding those customer needs. And so that's my segue and the transition into today's talk. I'm going to turn this over to Mary Jutton, who, if you don't know what she does a lot with TrackLight, but also with Evolve Law. And she's really spearheading throughout the country. I've been to a couple of events in a number of different cities now, and she's bringing together really unique and really interesting people that are doing cool things and sharing their knowledge. And frankly, per some of our conversations earlier, we could use some more of that here in Denver. So without anything more, Mary Jutton from Evolve Law.
Okay. So I'm supposed to tell all the panelists to hold your mic 3 inches from, it's very loud, but we are recording this, and thank you all for coming. This is our first Evolve Law event in Denver. It will not be our last, because we're inciting this little evolution, and we hope to get some of the people in the audience involved with creating something like a legal innovation group in Colorado, Boulder, Denver. I'll leave that all up to you with all your names of the different neighborhoods. But for those of you who don't know about Evolve Law is a community that I started with my co-founder, Jules Miller, who's with Hire & Esquire, and is tonight in Stanford because she's speaking on legal tech communities tomorrow at Future Law. This is our 13th, lucky 13, 13th official Evolve Law event. It started because Jules and I were having challenges with our respective companies selling into the legal market. I know the lawyers in the room find that unbelievable, but it's a difficult market. So we thought we would bring the idea of demo days or showing rather than telling. So we have the demo tables. And what I'd like to encourage everyone before you go, and there are lots of extra beer tickets, so please come back and take one. But before you go tonight, after our panel and our Darwin Talk, please go and check out the technology. The idea is that it's much better to look at something and see how it works than just read about it or hear about it. And we are, the reason we do Evolve Law is we do think there's a great opportunity to deliver better value to clients. And that's why I'm pretty excited about tonight's talk, because it's really focusing on client-driven technology. And it's not to say anything bad about the Clios and the other kind of back-end type products. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think what I've seen is the robots are not going to take over the world. As an aside, I was at Collision, which is in New Orleans, and they had a panel where they talked about robots. And they said that they best belonged on the farm because the robots were so rude, like they have no manners. So I thought that was really interesting. So the cows can be milked by robots, but I think we're still going to need lawyers. And my company Tracklight, the idea behind it is not, we don't just sell to lawyers, but the idea is why not free up a lawyer to actually practice law, to use their professional judgment, which is something that I believe, and this is my personal, not Evolve Law's view, I just think you can't completely replace that, even with AI. So with that, I will turn it over to Joe Burchard and from Law Booth to take away our panel.
Yeah, definitely. We're actually going to be talking about AI a little bit later on, so that was a perfect segue. We have a really, really killer panel for tonight. You guys are really lucky. Just to my right here is Katie DeBoard. She's a partner and chief innovation officer over at Bryan Cave, which is an international law firm that has roughly 800 lawyers and 24 offices worldwide. She drives Bryan Cave's global initiative to innovate the ways that they deliver client services, including finding new ways to train and develop associates, developing new processes and technologies to drive efficiencies and collaboration within the firm, and building custom technologies in-house to kind of ride the wave, I guess. To her right is Kate White, who is the client engagement and innovation strategist at Davis, Wright & Tremaine, an AmLaw 200 firm with roughly 500 lawyers and 9 offices across the US and China. She's a founding member of the DWT De Novo, Davis Wright Tremaine's dedicated innovation team. And last year, DWT was actually awarded the Innovative Law Firm of the Year by the International Legal Technology Association as a result of the De Novo work. So a lot of Kate's work right there. As the award suggests, Kate is focused on developing a culture of innovation within big law and designing legal solutions to meet the evolving needs of clients. And then to her right is John Rome. Now, John's a nationally renowned cybersecurity expert and the current CEO of Intensity Analytics, a tokenless behavioral biometric security solution that improves cybersecurity in a non-invasive manner. I know it sounds really confusing, but it's one of the coolest technologies that I've seen. You guys should really check it out. John's also an attorney, an entrepreneur with a successful acquisition under his belt, and an inventor who's played major roles in the legal technology evolution over the past few decades. So we can all kind of agree that the way that law is being delivered needs to change and become more efficient. But what are the biggest pain points for those practicing law? I think it would probably be best if we started with Katie from Big Law and take it away.
Yeah, and actually it's an interesting segue to what Adam was talking about with needing some empathy and understanding the human alignment between law and technology. And I was thinking about this question a lot, and there's a lot of pain points, but I feel like from my perspective, I was a practicing lawyer up until last year, before I stepped in this role. And I think there's a lot of disconnect between people who are viewing law from the outside and thinking about ways that you can improve processes and make them more efficient through technology and eliminate some of the redundancy and what we would call maybe commoditizable work. And then on the other hand, you have the attorneys practicing pretty bespoke practices. They have clients who they're advising on complex facts and complex litigations, and when they come up for a breath, they're told, well, technology could solve all of your problems. And I would say one of the biggest pain points is that there is no bridge right now between the lawyers who are sitting in this chair and the technologists who are sitting in this chair. And I agree with Mary. I don't think robots are going to take over lawyers. I don't see it. I don't know how it's possible. But I think that once we get lawyers understanding how technology can augment their practice and we start all speaking the same language, a lot of the other pain points can be rectified.
Definitely. John or Kate, you guys have any thoughts on that, or? Go ahead.
I would just add, I would second everything you said. I would just add that I think even though a lot of practicing, especially outside counsel, see how much technology can empower their practice and help them do better for their clients, change management is still such a huge issue. And a lot of it is that bridge between technologists being able to say, we can make this better for you and we can build you a solution, and then actually implementing that into the practice. There's more to it, obviously, than just plug and play. And a lot of it also involves breaking the work apart, putting it back together, figuring out who's best for what task, and then who actually needs to use the technology. So there's just a whole ecosystem around the change.
Definitely.
Just a quick comment on that. A famous professor, Jacob Schmuckler from the University of Minnesota, wrote a book on the diffusion of innovation, and had to do with the rationale as to why people do or don't readily accept new things. His book was published before there was a computer era, and so he focused on hybrid corn seed. And he could demonstrate that regular corn seed would grow, umpty-ump bushels per acre, but hybrid corn seed would raise that by 70%. It took 30 years for the farmers to switch from just bushel A to bushel B. There was no difference. It just takes a long time. And so to some extent, there's some history that guides us, and I'll have a lot more to say to that when I answer another question later.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like you guys said, it's kind of hard to get the attorneys on board and really pushing for this change. But the name of the event is Client-Driven Tech Solutions. So let's kind of talk about that for a little bit. Kate, I'd love to hear, what are your thoughts on client-driven tech solutions, and what exactly does that mean?
I think in our world it means technology solutions that are tailored to solve a specific client's pain point. Like Sam was saying, a lot of this comes out of design thinking, is having empathy, and building a solution that actually solves the problem. And a lot of times that can't be an out-of-the-box tech solution. So what our team has really focused on is understanding all the out-of-the-box tech solutions, amazing technology that's available, and then seeing how we can, bring those technologies together and adapt them for what our clients are really trying to accomplish. But it starts even further back, I think, which is, what are the new pressures on in-house counsel? What are the volume areas of work that they're needing to handle more efficiently? How can outside counsel partner with them and help bring those technology solutions to them and collaborate in building a better way to handle that work? I think there's so much. There's so much potential in just seeing the tech folks and the outside firms and the in-house counsel really partner in bringing all that knowledge together and building new solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. So we kind of talk about the evolving demands, I guess, for the clients, and just kind of within today's legal industry. Where do you think that change comes from? Like within the firm, or in-house counsel, or growing technology improvements? You kind of talked about a few different aspects, but where do you think the real drivers of that change is coming from? John, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I think you have to look at what kind of law we're talking about. If it's filing a routine divorce claim, or you're adopting a child and you need a lawyer to do that, or getting an immigration issue solved, I don't think there's any huge breakthrough coming from technology. I mean, once we got past word processing and document management, we pretty much had that licked. But in larger scale practice, some of the litigation and world events, and I have a lot to say about Panama Papers in a few minutes.
Yeah.
That's a game changer. And so when that happens, then the answer to your question is different. And it requires a little history. Again, I might save my comments about that to just kind of one. I wanted to trace a little bit of a history of technology in the industry, and then talk about where we're going and what some of the things are to pay attention to, because evolved law, to borrow a phrase, has to pay attention to what's happening in the industry. A quick analogy, I'll use a lot of analogies, I do. Not a lot of us worried about North Korea lobbing an atomic bomb over here 20 years ago. was a joke. Well, we could lob one there if we wanted to, but we were good people and we wouldn't do that. We're not so sure now. So all of a sudden, their getting technology has changed the way we think. They might be able to do that. So now all of a sudden, the need for technology in that thing changes from having a missile to having a missile defense system. So you have to look at kind of what's going on in the world, and there's a lot going on in the world that starts at the outside and comes in. So if we were to be very simplistic and divide the interest of people seeking legal services into sort of routine tested ones, as I said, adoption's a great example, or something really complex like a multinational litigation, on many, many issues, there's different answers. I'll get to that.
Yeah, totally agree. And so, similar to how you were just saying, there's different drivers for different, I guess, sections of law, big law, boutique firms, sole practitioners. Do you think that all these different, I guess, styles of law firms need technology to grow? Or do they have kind of different needs as far as how much technology they actually need to supplement their workflow? Katie, I'd love to hear what you got to say.
I would say my first instinct to that question is that it's a little bit different. Big law firms have far different challenges than a solo practitioner, and they have different practices. Their clients look different. I think in some ways, from a big law perspective, what you're looking at is a trend towards true business partnership, as Kate was alluding to, with your clients, where you're actually going into your clients and solving a systemic problem that has a tech-enabled component, that's associated with that. And I think that with a smaller, or solo type practice, you're going to be interacting and interfacing with your clients on a much more personalized level. It's not going to be a systemic business overhaul that you're trying to solve.
Definitely. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I would just say I think what we're seeing in our law firm at least is in big law, there are sort of two opportunities. I mean, there's tons of opportunities to leverage technology, but sort of two camps. One is there's technology solutions out there that can help our lawyers internally enhance their practices, do their work more efficiently, free up our associates from doing monotonous tasks, and instead start to make them really strategic advisors or project managers. That's like one camp. The other is really that collaboration with clients to solve their problems, to package the legal work in a way that adds that extra layer of value, where we help them draw out business insights or create a better system, design a system. So I see those as almost a little bit different and requiring a bit of different skills and change management techniques and things like that.
As far as importance, do you think one is more important for the other for law firms to focus on, or?
Yeah, I want to answer that. I actually think they're both really critical to approach, because if you focus too much on, externally facing technology for clients, but you leave your attorneys behind, you're leaving your business model kind of in the dark ages, and that's a mistake.
Yeah, that's how companies die out, right? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So there's kind of those two different, I guess, theories on where technology should be moving, whether it's in-house or kind of client-facing. For the client-facing solutions, who do you think should pay for it? Should it be the law firm that's paying for it, or should it be the client that's kind of supplementing it through the hourly rate?
I think law firms have a responsibility to invest in technology that's going to help them do better for their clients. So I think law firms need to definitely be making those investments. I mean, the stat is something like your average business invests 3.5% of revenues in R&D, and the average large law firm invests like less than 1%. I think we're going to see that changing, and we already are. We have people like Katie and my team on staff. So we're already starting to see that change happen, but I think that where we are still providing legal expertise to a client, and then we want to take that a step further, and they're getting legal work product out of the technology solution, I think there's there's a pricing model involved in that. And what we have found is clients are more than willing to pay for that extra value they're getting from the insights that can be drawn from technology.
Right, absolutely. John, what do you think?
Yeah, again, I think it's a complex answer that varies with the nature of the practice and sort of the state of the world. And maybe it's a good point at this point, since I've sort of alluded to deferring it for a second. Let me indulge your patience for a second and give you what I would call the Neil deGrasse Tyson view of technology in the world. If you go all the way back to BC days, if you paid your taxes, you got a little chit sheet from the tax collector, the famous tax collector in the Bible, and the only way that you could prove you paid it is to show them the chit sheet later. So probably the first technical invention that happened was somebody came up with an urn of some kind, and they say, well, if you put the chit sheet in there, it won't rot as fast. And maybe that was the first use of technology, and the first purpose of that was so that you could avoid a cost, another way of earning more money. And then if you look at the epic of law and technology, it really only divides into 3 eras. And the first one is before anything electric. So up until about 1870, automation in a law firm might be a file cabinet. We have a nice way of cabinets on wooden wheels, and we can roll the papers out, the 27 that are in there, and roll them back in, and that's a nice way to automate the practice of the firm. But it didn't really change anything. And then along came electricity, which had only 3 aspects to it. It had lights, telegraph, and telephone. Now that changed technology in the law practice a lot, because now you could communicate with a client that didn't have to get on a horse or walk over there, sorry. You could work at night, so you doubled your, not like Abe Lincoln that had to work by firelight. You could actually talk to a client without having to have them come in. So somebody at that era might have said, as we might be tempted to today, what else do I need? Well, this is really super. And then along came the advent of the computer. And I have to say, at the risk of dating myself considerably, my professional career spans that entire spectrum. I got involved in computers in 1958. I graduated from law school in 1969, and I did something that lawyers would normally do, so I toted up billable hours. And I come up with about 112,000 hours that I've spent in the era of using technology with law, calculated as 47 years times 300 days a year times an average of 20 working days per month times 8 hours a day, and it's 112,000 hours. So I spent a lot of time, and my focus to justify how I spent my life doing that was to focus on bettering the practice of law and bettering the delivery of legal services. So when you look back initially at the things that I played a significant role in, this is not about me, it's about the profession and lessons that we have to take. Those who don't pay attention to the laws of history are doomed to repeat them, somebody once said. So initially the really big deals were word processing. Secretaries would quit and leave because she, at the time, started crying when the lawyer came in and said, you got to retype that whole brief, and she wanted to go home and cook dinner for the kids and couldn't. That had a huge impact on the social issues relating to the practice of law. Word processing, everybody takes that everybody takes that for granted today. And then the next thing that happened, again, is so mundane we don't think about it, is timekeeping and billing. Keeping track of everything we did and getting the invoice out to the client and all that sort of stuff. That took a lot of time. And now all of a sudden, it's all automatic, and we don't even think about that anymore. The trend that I'm starting to talk to here is adding technology to lower costs and increase the relationship with the clients. Clients appreciated accurate billing that was always delivered at the right time and was always accurate and always could be authenticated back to an actual source. And then people say, well, we have this thing called documents. We got to keep track of all these documents. Cases are getting bigger. And through about 1975, a huge case might involve 1,000 documents or more. I mean, just a really enormous case. So what they do, they hired a pool of paralegals, and they came in, and the paralegals would go through the documents, and then somebody said, well, there's a computer technology that can do that. And of course, there was all the resistance to that. Well, why would we replace humans with machines? Humans are so much better. And of course, we always agreed with that. If you had a one-document case, the only technology you needed was a thumbtack. You stick the document up on the wall, and then you had it. You maintained it, you stored it, and you could retrieve it by looking at it. And then along came cases like Exxon Valdez with 10 million documents and a no-nonsense judge that said, you've got 10 months to get on top of those. There is not a group of people in the world, any size group, that can coherently read, organize 10 million documents just using people. They had to go to machines. So initially, they went to machines to scan them, but what people forgot to think about at the time is if you scan 10 million documents, you just pass the problem down the pike to the next step, which was then you have to somehow deal with them. So if you have 10 million documents scanned to a disk, so what? You want to find the document that relates to this fact on this date by this person, and it's not indexed that way. And so that begat the technology called unstructured text and full text retrieval. So we got involved with that and figured out how to do that. Again, the trend continues. We are using technology to make more money, to provide better services to clients by using automation. And then the proverbial, you know what, hit the fan. Now, the technology is out and it's coming back into the legal profession for the first time. I'm going to say that again because it's so important. Now, the North Korean bomb was on the other side. It's called cyber war. And whether it's another government or it's another client, now they are using technology for the first time to invade the province of the practice of law. And there's no defense to it. So when I hear, and again, I have my own views, but I've spent my whole life as I went through working on technologies to make the practice of law better, that nobody's paying any attention to that. It's like the deck chairs on the Titanic. But wait a minute, not what you think. When people use the analogy of the deck chairs on the Titanic, what they're talking about is what happened after the crash. Why are you wasting your time moving those chairs around? You better be looking for a lifeboat. But the real problem was the day before. Why are you sitting there having a nice drink and looking up at the sky and not looking out at the horizon? It's the horizon that's going to kill you. So by not paying attention to that, you wound up drowning. That's what's happening today, and there's two words for it. It's all over the place. It's called Panama Papers. The other guys are really good. They're incented. They're paid. They get a huge upside, whether you call it ransomware or anything else like that. Technology, for the first time in the practice of law, has become an enemy rather than a benefit. Whether the benefit shows up as a cost savings or shows up as a revenue augmenting thing, it's a problem. And so I have to say sometimes in my own thing, I try to get people's attention and say, you know, geez, there's an iceberg out there. Yeah, well, let's get our social media act together. I'm not saying that's not important, but talk to a lawyer who belongs to a partnership whose house is on the line because it's not a protected corporation, and they got a $20 million judgment from courts, which recently, and there's now case law out there, if you don't take care of confidential data, you're liable. What are you doing about it? So when somebody tells me we're just slammed, I ask the question, slammed doing what? Are you paying attention to what's going on out there? So I put my life's focus on technology early on as a pro and now as a defensive thing because that is the key issue that's out there. There's nothing else that gets to that level, in my personal opinion, because not on the personal practice of law, you know, the adoptions and that sort of thing, but in big corporate law, the obvious question that's going to come from the general counsel of the big outside company is, tell me in detail, how do you protect yourselves when I give you my confidential data? And if the answer is, well, we have a username and password, they need to find another firm.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really cool technological, you know, milestones within the legal landscape that really changed how law was practiced entirely. And it kind of brings up a question in my mind of like, what's next out there? You know, what's the next technology? What's the next e-discovery that's going to change the way that people are handling documents? You know, how is AI going to be the next big one, or what do you think basically the next big technology for the law practice is going to be?
We just touched on this, but when we're using the term technology, we're using it kind of all over the place. We're talking about technology internally within the firm. We're talking about technology that, firms like ours are building for clients to help refine processes, help make sure that vendors are negotiating contracts according to the terms that have been approved by the General Counsel's office. And so there's a lot of different ranges of the term technology. I think in terms of law firms and how technology is going to be used in-house, I think that the next big thing personally is a couple of things. And it's not necessarily a technology. I don't have a predictor of a technology that's going to change the world, but it's how technology is integrated within law firms. And it's one is that I think technology is going to be increasingly used as part of a holistic solution that law firms offer to clients. So when there is a large M&A transaction, for example, the law firms are going to be able to handle from nuts to bolts everything about that transaction, all the due diligence. They'll have the LPO relationships lined up. They'll have the technology in-house, like Kira or whatever, to do the due diligence. They'll be able to run the information up to the next level so that the company that's merged can then use that data in different ways. And the law firm will really facilitate the ease of use of that data for that client going forward. I think that's one thing in my view. And I think the next thing is, and Kate and I were talking about this before, is I think there's a lot of opportunity for strategic partnerships between law firms and other technology companies. And if we work together and if we share expertise, we can identify that new technology that I unfortunately, haven't identified yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm with Katie. I don't have a technology that I think is the next thing, but I think we are going to see a shift in big law becoming a lot more like the Big Four, where we're focused heavily on consulting with our clients and helping them mitigate risk. And really leveraging technology to do that, pulling together tons of data and saying, here's what we can tell you about, what could fall apart about this deal or where this type of litigation might head, how much it probably would cost you if we make this decision versus this decision. I think those types of predictive analytics are going to be a core offering of law firms in the future. And of course, a big challenge with that is we have to figure out how we change our pricing model and our revenue generating model where that is paid for as value rather than being a reactive legal expert in helping a client once a legal event arises. So really doing that proactive consulting going forward.
Definitely, I totally agree with you. And I think it's becoming increasingly obvious, at least to me, that technology is not only here, but it's here to stay. And if you don't adapt, you're pretty much going to die off as a law firm. So for the lawyers that are here that are kind of looking for ways to get involved in the legal tech space, what's the best move? How can they get involved? How can they leverage technology to help optimize their growth?
Let me start with that by continuing the answer to the previous question and segueing right into that. At the risk of being slightly controversial, I don't always agree with what you two just said, and let me explain why and document my view. At the risk
like a lawyer would do.
Bring it.
This is as close to being a lawyer as I get. At the risk of really flattering Katie with all the flattering she needs, she's a titanic person in the industry with unique skills. You should read her LinkedIn thing. I did carefully, did some background research, and her firm is one very unique, very capable firm. They're not typical and they're not standard. So my view is law firms should not be involved in inventing technology for several killer reasons. Number one is that they then put themselves in peril of losing the employees that invent that, because yesterday they were worth $60,000 a year, now they're worth $180,000. Loyalty is for zero, to edit my words here for a minute. And so, and I know an awful lot about the employment market in the IT world. I know even more about it in the cybersecurity world, and there aren't any people out there. So the problem is that somebody who works for a law firm who invents something that's really cool, they're going to get bought away from that law firm in 6 months. So it's a failed strategy. For the same reason that a law firm would say to its client, well, you should use us as an outside supplier and don't do it yourself. For all those reasons, the outside law firm, Brian Cave in this case, and again, a titanic firm, has the skills to do that. And so they say, we can do that practice of law better than you can, use us. I make the same point when it comes to technology, because one of the surviving issues in technology is, where are you going to be in 10 years? What's your long-term support plan? What's your backup? What happens if all of you guys lose interest? Or worse, you get your big IPO and you're all worth, $100 trillion and you leave. Where are you then? You're stuck. Whereas the other key technologies that we have, the ones I went through before, electricity and telephone and Xerox, you're not stuck anymore. Xerox doesn't work, you get some other machine. It becomes a commodity, it's fungible. So I think one has to be really careful unless you have this unique one-off thing. Now, if it's a $10 billion case and you're going to do it for one case, go for it if you can find the talent. So that's my view.
What do you guys think? How do these guys get involved in the legal tech space?
I mean, what I would say is John is totally right. And I think one of the opportunities is thinking about ways that you can partner with law firms, because we are looking for partners in the tech space for that reason. And I think the law firms that identify some strategic partnerships, those are the law firms that are really going to be able to play in this space without facing some of the risk that, a law firm that acts as a software company, could potentially face.
Yeah, and just two things. To your point, I totally agree. I think one of the challenges law firms are going to have to confront is that long-term investment strategy that they are not set up to make right now.
Right, and I don't think you're going to get a client to pay for that, because they're going to say, if you guys are going to make a whole bunch of money and do an IPO based on what I pay you to do, cut me in.
Right.
So, or we're headed in that direction. The other thing is, it's not whether you have a guitar, it's how well you play it. And so the differentiator is to take standard technologies that are out there and weave magic. I mean, every lawyer starts his or her practice the day after they pass the bar. On the first day, they're all more or less equal. Yeah, some do better in law school than others. 20 years later, some are nationally renowned to become Supreme Court justices or write textbooks or, are standouts in their field, and others are not so standout. And so I think it's the use of technology, and therefore on we vendors, the creativity is demonstrate longevity, demonstrate ease of use, demonstrate survivability, demonstrate integratability. So when somebody comes to me and says, I built a really cool piece of software, it's all built with freeware and shareware and hopeware, run from it. It ain't gonna be here in 5 years from now. But if it's built on a standard platform, one of the big standard ones, then it's a good investment.
Just to add about how people can get involved, lawyers who are interested in technology. I mean, I think there's so many learning opportunities out there. The International Legal Technology Association, ILTACon, is a conference. It's quite an investment, but it is just a crash course in all of the emerging technologies that are out there in law, and really, really smart people talking about all sorts of things, and very forward-thinking lawyers talking about how they're using technology to change the practice.
Definitely. So let's get to the I think there's a kind of concern within the legal industry that lawyers are seeing technology improvements that are kind of taking the attorney out of the picture. And it's really scary for lawyers because that's putting them out of business. What's your take on AI? Now, I kind of actually have an inside scoop on this. I've talked with the guys over at Watson, who Ross Intelligence runs off of. So I know where kind of it is, but I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on, are the robots going to take over? Is it going to be a Terminator, status where there's no more lawyers and it's all robots, or?
No.
What do you think? Yeah.
Agreed. Ditto.
Do you think there's any time frame on that, or?
Well, I think you have to look at, let's use the medical profession as an example. They've demonstrated that robots can do a full knee replace with more precision because it's a machine guiding something to within microns, which is less than the human brain can control human movement. So I'll give you that because it's a physical action. But lawyers think. And AI, and I am a technologist, my whole life is dedicated to it. AI is not going to replace legal thinking. It just isn't. It can make a difference. It can find things faster. It can make suggestions. It can bring up precedents. There's a saying that we have in the technology business, and I mentioned it to one of my tech colleagues out here, and he agreed. Lawyers who are afraid of being replaced by computers ought to be.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah. I like that. Probably gonna steal that from you.
I think in a positive light, I mean, the consistent thing we're seeing is that in-house counsel and outside counsel, they're being required to provide answers more immediately, right? Immediacy is a huge driver, and then efficiency. And if we can, I mean, all this is looking for ways to leverage technology so that lawyers can provide more immediate, educated answers rather than legal analysis, and that we can do legal work more efficiently. It's far less scary to think about it when you just think about how do we use technology to do those two things better.
Yeah, I mean, I see it the same way as augmenting what lawyers do, and I totally agree with John that lawyers that are scared of being replaced by robots should be. But I think that where AI could come into play is, as a lawyer is looking at a legal situation, and you're looking at a situation where you're looking to change the law or refine the law, which happens all the time, I think what could possibly happen is that AI can expand your brain in terms of how you can approach the legal issue before the court. The AI potentially could find analogous situations that could be applicable to your case. It's not there yet, but I think that's one possibility of how it could augment lawyer thinking. It could provide the predictive, component to as you're, gearing up for trial and developing your trial strategy. But at the end of the day, as lawyers, we apply facts to the law and we apply the human elements to the law. There's a 360-degree, living, thing associated with practicing law. And, you have policy issues, you have, jurisdictional issues, and I don't see AI going beyond an augmenting function.
Definitely. And
yes, very well said. I completely agree. There's that element of humanity, and we talked about it earlier. You take a young parent that looks at a child and the child is about to cry, and you just know it from a bunch of symbols and movements and facial and, everything. That's a lot of AI to pack into somebody's brain where mother's instinct works just as well. And I think the jewel that lawyers have to offer their clients is it's a different human brain.
Definitely. And just finally, last question here. A lot of people are saying that lawyers are really slow to adopt to technology. And I think, in some cases that's definitely the truth, but in your guys' cases, it's been really cool to read about how you guys are embracing technology and using it to kind of optimize your entire workflows. What do you think the big barriers are for attorneys, both sole practitioners to the AmLaw 50s, and what are the costs of not adopting the technology and not using the technology to their advantage?
Darwin.
That's
it. Death. That's it. You don't adopt, you don't eat, you die. That's it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I think the billable hour is a huge impediment to adoption of technology and efficiency in legal practice, especially in the corporate world. I mean, I think we need to find alternative ways to price our services and our expertise that will augment even more how quickly we're going to technology and how we're using it.
What do you think are the most promising alternative fee arrangements that are available right now?
I think success fees are huge. I mean, I think value-based billing. I mean, I think tailoring it to what does this mean for the bottom line of the company? Is this a proactive strategic legal project or a reactive, So I mean, in general sense, I think that those are things that law firms are looking more and more to and partnering with clients to figure this out together.
At least the good law firms.
Well, there's an interesting story in Texas. Richard Racehorse Haynes, a famous criminal defense lawyer who primarily specialized in capital cases. His fee arrangement was very simple. Give me everything you have, because if you lose, you won't need it anyway. And if you win, I'll decide how valuable my services were, and I'll give you back what I don't want to keep. You know, I think you're right, spot on. The value billing, it can't be based on hours.
You know, mine echoes what Kate was saying, but I think in terms of barriers to lawyers adopting technology, I also think you need to think about, you know, it's sort of beyond the billable hour. You need to make that technology really easy for them to understand and work with. And right now, I think it feels like to lawyers there's a lot of fragmented technology out there. All these different technologies out there, and what the lawyers need is something consolidated that they can turn on and that is, you know, has a good user interface, and they can see right away, okay, this will actually help me practice, and I am not gonna, it's not gonna require 6 months to figure this out. I feel like there is a disconnect between sometimes, you know, it's almost like you need to get into the lawyers' brains and how they practice. My team, I oversee a team of software developers, and we're starting a shadowing program where my developers are going to start shadowing lawyers because they just need to see how lawyers practice and how they need to interface. And so I think one of the barriers is truly the disconnect between the technologists and the lawyers.
And it's also not one size fits all. I mean, within firms like ours, there are, you know, the different practice areas are so different. And, you know, like Katie's saying, I mean, what one lawyer, what a litigator needs and what a deal lawyer needs are very different things. And so I feel like as firms, we're probably going to get there. But right now, we've invested a lot in technologists and technology departments and technology. But we really, I think, are going to see investments in change managers who are there to help make this adoption easier on the lawyers.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts that you guys have that you'd like to share with everybody here?
You know, I mean, the only thing it was kind of to one of the earlier questions about who are the biggest agents of change. And, you know, I would say the GCs cannot be understated, the role of the general counsels in pushing change. The role of the GC really has become a business advisor, and they are our best friends in terms of forcing the law firms to change even when they don't want to change. And, you know, those in-house counsel groups, the, you know, CLOC, the ACC, you know, those groups are really fostering wonderful and enormous change within the industry.
Something else Katie and I spoke about earlier was just the willingness to share knowledge, to share information. I mean, we're in nascent stages in this industry and adopting technology, and the willingness to talk about what we've tried, what's succeeded, what's failed, and what we've learned from it together as in-house legal departments, as law firms, as technologists, really just having these conversations. And thanks to Evolve Law, we have a platform to do that.
Well, I completely agree with what you ladies have said, and it's really interesting. In our world, we use phrases like market drivers and revenue producers, and now there's a couple of new ones. One is the law of compliance, and the other is the cost of liability. You look at the Wyndham Hotel case last year, you know, they didn't protect their customers' data as well as they said they did. Cost them $200 million. So the GC has to answer to a different set of standards. Say they got Sarbanes-Oxley and FFIEC and, you know, all of the various corporate governance standards that they have to live up to, and they're going to pass them right along to the law firms.
Definitely. Well, thank you guys so much for spending the time. I had a great conversation with you guys. Really learned a lot, genuinely. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, we can do a Q&A. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I guess we might as well open up for questions from anybody in the audience. Yeah, Eureka.
Hi, my name is Eureka, and I used to be director of intellectual property for a NASDAQ-traded company. And the biggest problem that I used to have at the time was just the differences. I mean, for a variety of reasons, we dealt with a number of different law firms, and they were all at different levels of technology. So then I had some that had problems giving me monthly docket updates, whereas others were completely electronic. Can you comment a little bit on how, Katie, you mentioned how you are trying to work together as law firms to sort of like bring everybody up to a level. Can you comment a little bit on how you're trying to affect those changes, as well as what you're hearing from your clients?
For me, and I would suspect that Kate will say the same thing, I think it is incumbent on law firms to create with clients some standard platforms that everyone works off of. I think that we frankly have done our clients a disservice by all of us working on different platforms, working on different billing types of arrangements, and I think that, just as Kate said, there is an opportunity for law firms to work with CLOC, the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, to really think through what those standards should be for the industry. And we're either going to be thought leaders or we're going to be followers. It's going to be one of those, because, as I said, CLOC is really pushing this stuff and forcing everybody to change. And I am a true believer that needs to change.
I can give a really specific example, and I don't have the answer, but I'll talk to you about a challenge that I'm seeing and that our firm is seeing and wants to be a thought leader in, and we're trying to work with in-house counsel on, which is, to your point about building transparency and self-service models, right? So corporate legal departments work with many law firms. One of the things we've done for our clients is built out a dashboard that allows them complete transparency into our accounting and timekeeping systems, so that they're able to see in near real time how the legal bills are stacking up, what time's being spent by which timekeepers, how much is their billable rate, how many hours went into this analysis. And I think it's a valuable tool, but the challenge is, and we see it, is we're saying to our clients, well, what about when your other 9 law firms start to offer you a dashboard? Are you going to log in to 10 different dashboards? And so we see a real need for law firms to come together, for probably clients to drive that, but for law firms to come together and build standard platforms like Katie was mentioning.
And the law departments need to be transparent too, because oftentimes the law departments aren't willing to be transparent on their own e-billing side, which is interesting, because you don't have full transparency if you don't have the dual window.
And the whole point of that technology is to make clients' lives easier. I mean, we're not charging them for that. So we want it to be as useful as possible to them. So yeah, we're asking those tough questions, and I think working together to try to figure out what the answer is.
My plate's full, and I'm not going to do any more inventing in the rest of my life, but I just had a great idea. Look what happened to the airlines. They all had their different systems, and then along comes Expedia, and they solved the problem. So imagine, here's a new business idea. Somebody says, I'm the Expedia of law firms, and I'm going to put together a consolidated portal that'll take all of these different things and rationalize it so you go to one place and it shows you all the things. I think there's an opportunity for that. Technologists could respond to meet your need. It's a great point that you make.
Definitely. Totally agree. Do we have any other questions?
You talked briefly about artificial intelligence, and I worked as a legal assistant for a period of time, and my lawyers were very resistant to technological change. I don't think anyone thinks that robots are going to replace lawyers, but what do you think the future of bots or virtual assistants will be as far as their collaboration with lawyers in the future?
Well, I think artificial intelligence is in such an early stage right now that it's dumb artificial intelligence, if that makes any sense. There's not very much emotion that goes into it. There's not much empathy. Kind of like you guys have been saying, there's not really the human aspect to artificial intelligence yet. And we're still probably 20, 30 years out until we hit that point. And up until then, I think it's going to be a lot of, like you guys said, kind of automating processes that you would pass off to paralegals historically. And it's going to more of supplement attorneys' workflows as opposed to taking them over.
I also think, though, to your question, I think clients are less and less willing to pay for massive overhead. And so to the extent that technology can reduce overhead, I think that the law firms that adopt it will, do better than the law firms that don't.
I agree, and the two-word support for Katie's thing is called Legal Zoom.
Yeah.
Raise the price too high, we got a better idea.
Yeah. Yeah, and as far as assistance goes, I mean, I think we've seen a pretty rapid adoption of document automation, things that paralegals and legal secretaries used to do. So I think that's a sign that there's a lot of openness, and that tools that truly take out the inefficiencies or make something far more cost-effective for clients will get adopted quickly. It's those really big, huge, kind of scary in the future things that I do think, to Joe's point, it'll be a slower rate of adoption.
I think I saw one more question, yeah. Or two more? Okay. Perfect.
So in the past, the way law firms have purchased technology has been very, one-off, kind of the model of the past. And now, with the SaaS features coming out, with law firms developing their own technology, I'm curious kind of how you guys see the future of how law firms purchase technology playing out. You think the SaaS is going to have an impact?
I think hopefully we're going to have better holistic strategic plans around what technologies we adopt, what technology companies we partner with or buy. I think there's just going to be a lot more forward, looking into the future and thinking far more strategically about what we invest in.
I'll give you a slightly different answer to that. By analogy, the main driver for the features in smartphones are Japanese teenage girls. It's well known. They're the innovators, and the market adapts to them, and everybody else follows. So let's follow that same model. What are the main drivers in that? Companies like ours get valued a lot higher if they have a recurring revenue stream than if they have a fixed revenue stream. So we're all going for subscription revenues and, for instance, charging, because it's better for the business models, for the people who value our businesses, and we hope you like it.
I'm sure you've probably heard this, but there are too many lawyers out there. And do you see in the near term, in the next 5 years, tech helping with that? Like I see, the booth, I forgot the name of it, law booth actually helping, clients reach, smaller boutique law firms and maybe helping with that. But do you see in the near term tech helping with that problem? And then in long term, do you see tech hurting that, or am I completely off base?
Joe, maybe you can take that question.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a really great question. There's no, I think everybody kind of has seen the numbers as far as law school applications. They've kind of crashed because it used to be a guaranteed job when you got out of school, but it really isn't that anymore. And I think there's going to be different technology solutions for the different types of lawyers. So the ones that come out of the elite schools, the ones that are going to get hired by AmLaw 50, they don't really need technology to supplement their practice yet because they're going to be within one of the larger firms. Now, the other lawyers, I shouldn't say like other lawyers, but kind of the lawyers that are going to law firms that don't, or law schools that don't guarantee placement in a job, I think they're going to be the ones that are using technology the most, because they're going to be able to reach out and find the clients that historically they haven't been able to find because they haven't had like the referral cycle that kind of the more pedigreed attorneys have. I don't know, what do you guys think?
About how technology will help too many lawyers find legal needs. I mean, I think if you ask our friend Dan Lear, he would say there's a huge underserved market of people who need legal help and legal advice that aren't being served because they don't know how to find the right person at the right price. And companies like Avo and LegalZoom, and they're helping connect legal needs and practitioners, which I think will help that problem. The other thing I'd say is with too many lawyers without jobs, the good news is there are a lot of alternative career paths now that intersect between law and technology or law and design. And I think we're going to see more and more of that.
That brings up the other point that I kind of lost while I was talking there. So 80% of Americans don't have adequate access to legal services. And price is the number one factor contributing to that. And what technology is doing is driving down the overall cost for clients. So when a lot of attorneys see technology driving down the price, they see a shrinking market size, when in reality it's growing the market because it's giving more access to clients who historically wouldn't have access to it at all.
I think we have one more question from Chad.
Hi. Just to touch on a point by John earlier, we seem to now be in a revolutionary age for communication, where we now have actually messaging apps that are outpacing social media as a means of communication, both growth and usage. And my question is, how are law firms adjusting to that? Because from the perspective of the GC, their primary methods of communicating with an attorney are a phone call or an email, let alone through social media or any other means. What are some ideas that law firms are implementing, or some that might be on the horizon?
So, I think that's a big challenge for law firms. And there's an internal challenge, to communicate and collaborate with each other better, and then the external challenge of communicating and collaborating better with our clients. One of the tools that we're about to start piloting is called ThreadKM, which is a collaboration tool internally for lawyers, and essentially the tool communicates in the way that we're all becoming accustomed, which is by thread, and then by continuous sort of text style that you can link in your documents and really have sort of a collaborative system. I think there are other opportunities out there as well. The trick for communicating and collaborating externally with clients, I think that needs to be solved by you guys. We need technologists to solve that problem, because we need, a good platform where the communication flows in a manner that we can all handle. The emails are out of control.
Just to really quick, there's a nice template that's going to pave the way to answering that question. It's in the medical profession. It's already happened with Obamacare. Doctors are required to provide patient portals. So now you get on and you say, Doc, should I take 1 aspirin or 2? And they say 2. So they've imparted professional judgment for 0.4 of 1 second. It's valuable, but it doesn't constitute an office visit. They're going to have to solve that problem and set a template for law. I think the meds are going to get there first.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd just say where we're at is we've tested and experimented at this point. We've adopted an enterprise-wide messaging solution that failed, and we got rid of it. So we knew that was kind of out-of-the-box solution, didn't work for us. So now we're kind of building our own. We've been really scrappy at using SharePoint. We've got SharePoint experts who can build out messaging boards for us. We've used them with clients. We've used them internally. But I don't think we have the answer yet. But we are. I'm pleased to say that our firm is really testing and experimenting how we can adopt a solution like that.
Another thing that both as Kate mentioned, and my firm also does, is that we've adopted other technologies that facilitate other types of communication, like the dashboards, where clients can see real time where matters stand, what the budget is. You can even look granularly for us at which attorneys are having a longer than average resolution cycle for certain matters, so that you can flag those issues and see if there's a problem. So there are communication tools that are out there that some firms are using that give visibility in that way, but I think that there needs to be more done.
Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you guys stopping by.
Stopping by.
Stopping by. Just swing by.
Well, I wanted to thank Joe, and I didn't introduce Joe properly at the beginning because I got all excited about the robots. But Joe is part of Law Booth, and we're going to hear from Willie from Law Booth in a moment with our Darwin Talk. But Law Booth, it's very interesting to me because neither of these two are lawyers, and they came up with their solution. And so as we go through the different Evolve Law members, we now have 84 members, and Davis Wright Tremaine is a founding law firm member, and we're happy if Brian Cave wants to join them. Always be selling. But the whole idea is each of these companies, the legal tech companies, they have different stories. Sometimes it's lawyers like eBrevia, lawyers that were super frustrated with losing their entire weekends with document review, so they created something. Or you get people who come in from the outside and say, okay, this process is broken, we need to fix it. So I think it's a really exciting time. I can tell you that I hope that we don't go the same way as some of the medical, because it's my new pet peeve, between I got kids, I got, my own dentist, I live in Arizona half time, so I gotta go to a dermatologist every year. I have to log into like 12 different portals to figure out what the results are from this test or that test. So let's hope we go down this standardization in some form. I think it's a huge opportunity if you want to go off into the medical field to figure that out. I know ZocDoc is trying to do it, but somebody needs to do it better. So I will get off my soapbox and thank all of you for coming and talking. And I wanted to thank not only our hosts, Adam and Trent and all the great guys here, but Iron Mountain's Intellectual Property Management sponsored this, and then they could not attend. So all of the beer and all of the cheese and everything is thanks to Iron Mountain's Intellectual Property Management. So a big round of applause for them. And at Evolve Law, we do something called a Darwin Talk, and it is a 5-minute thought-provoking talk. And do you have your clicker? Okay, so we don't time people, but it's supposed to be 5 minutes, and then afterwards you can come up and say what you think about it. And we'll continue networking, and please come take some of the beer tickets, and we can, I guess, leave the leftover beer tickets and get Calvin to honor them for quite a while here with the logic. Okay. Okay, well, here we go with the Darwin Talk.
Thank you, Mary. And thank you, panelists. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen and attorneys. My name is Willie Ogerzali. I'm the CEO of Law Booth. I am not an attorney, but before all my credibility goes out the window, we do have an attorney co-founder who went to Michigan Law. He's reviewed the pitch. He's ensured that it is accurate. So, and I'm not here to talk about Law Booth. I'm happy to talk about that later. Tonight I'm here to talk to you guys about the future of law, and specifically some trends we're seeing in the industry and how lawyers are evolving or not evolving to adapt to these changes. So we're going to start by talking about disruption at a pretty high level. And then we're going to move on to some of the patterns that we're seeing to emerge across industries. We'll move over to a quick story to give this all some context. Then we'll share some fun facts that, about some of the trends that we're seeing in the industry. And at this point in time, some of the lawyers in the audience might be getting a little overwhelmed, a little fearful of the future. So I'll share with you guys a little bit of a pep talk, and we'll touch on some of the opportunity that's at stake for lawyers like you that aren't afraid of technology. Then I'll give some examples of firms who are embracing the change. And lastly, I'll give you guys some tips to survive or even thrive throughout the changing landscape. So, oh yeah, we have less than 10 minutes to get through all of this, so we're going to be moving very quickly. So as many of you know, we are living in an age of a technological revolution. And it's very similar to the Industrial Revolution 200 years ago, in which industries that have existed for decades or centuries are being replaced. Only this time, instead of workforces and warehouses, the innovations are coming in the form of technology, apps, and websites. Oops, moving too fast. So across these disruptions in all industries, we're beginning to see some patterns emerge. And David Michela coined this term, the toy threat obvious cycle, that we're seeing across every single disruption. And what this means is that every disruption begins somewhere. It starts small. Generally, the technology at this point is pretty basic. It's more of a want to have than a need to have, and the only people really using it are the early adopters. Every disruption starts here. And at this point in time, the incumbents in the industry generally view the innovation as more of a toy than a threat. And then as the innovation gains traction, it starts to steal away some market share from these incumbents, and the technology improves. And at this point in time, the incumbents have a very important decision to make. This happens in every disruption. They can either embrace the technology and place a bet on the future, or they can fight the technology and work to maintain their status quo. So, of course, technology, this trend continues. It almost never goes away at this point unless another innovation replaces it. And sooner, before you know it, what was once a toy is now the obvious choice for consumers. And the incumbents that chose to embrace the change reap massive rewards, while those who chose to fight it are displaced or they die, as we mentioned earlier. So everybody here remembers Kodak. And many of you remember Kodak's glory days, when they dominated the film industry. In 1997, Kodak controlled 90% of the market for cameras and 85% of the market for film. Nobody thought Kodak was going anywhere. 10 years before that, a toy emerged. Do you guys know what that toy was? Digital cameras. What many of you may not know is that digital cameras weren't invented by a startup. They were actually created by Kodak engineers in-house. But at the time, management viewed it as a toy. They thought nobody would ever want to look at a picture on a television screen. But of course, as we all know, digital cameras gained traction, and they started to steal some market share. And then at this point, Kodak faced a decision. Do we place a bet on digital cameras? Or do we fight to maintain our high margins that we're enjoying with film and camera? And as many of you know, they chose to prioritize margins over innovation, and 15 years later, they filed bankruptcy, and 50,000 people lost their jobs. So this example, I think, is very relevant because the legal industry, legal tech started as a toy, but now it's absolutely in the threat stage, and lawyers are facing a similar decision. So how do we know that the industry is ripe for disruption? Well, in 2005, only 7% of individuals are using the internet to find an attorney. And friends and family vastly outweighed this. Less than 10 years later, these numbers have flipped. We now see the majority of individuals going to the internet as a primary destination for finding a lawyer. There's several reasons that this has happened. First of all, we as consumers are becoming more comfortable with technology. So with every disruption that occurs and every habit that changes, every process in our life that is now replaced with technology, we become more comfortable with technology. And we even begin to expect technology throughout our lives. Of course, at the same time, the technology is improving. So in 2005, your options online for finding an attorney were probably very limited, and you were better off using your friends and family. But 10 years later, there's a lot of new technology out there, and the technology has improved vastly. And now, if you go online, the tools that are available for free even are more efficient and accessible and informative than all of your friends and family combined. And this trend is not going anywhere. We see it continuing. So the last piece of why we're seeing this is that when we become comfortable with technology, and it invades every other area of your life, when you encounter a process or an industry that doesn't meet your expectations for technology, we as consumers get pissed off. And this is where the real disruption comes from. So at the end of the day, consumers always win because they vote with their dollars to decide where the industry heads. And typically, you only need consumers in order for disruption to occur. But interestingly enough, we're seeing it happen on both sides in the legal industry, both from the consumer side and the attorney side, specifically with millennial attorneys. So attorneys graduating from law school are millennials, and they expect technology as well throughout their lives. So this explains why we're seeing 1/3 of lawyers, new associates, leave their law firm in 3 years, which is really a big problem for the law firms that are spending up to $250,000 to train new associates. And the reason for this is that associates, when they encounter a big law firm that's stuck in the past, this frustrates them, and they're willing to accept even lower pay to go work for a law firm that meets their expectations, a more progressive law firm. And the law firms that are capitalizing on this and are choosing to embrace these changes and try to attract these lawyers are attracting the top talent and retaining them. So it goes beyond just providing value to your clients. It's really an impact on the full firm. So this is an opportunity. I know you guys might be feeling a little bit afraid, but there's a huge opportunity at stake, and you guys shouldn't be afraid, because just the fact that you're here makes me very confident that you are not the type of lawyers to get displaced. So earlier we talked a bit about this. There's an opportunity just from the displacement, the lawyers that refuse to change. This is going to create opportunity for the lawyers like you who are willing to embrace the changes. But like we mentioned earlier, the majority of this opportunity is going to come from the 80% of Americans who previously did not have adequate access to legal services and now do. As prices go down and efficiency increases, more and more individuals are going to be able to hire a lawyer. And with every disruption, as the need becomes more accessible, we actually see these markets grow. And the final piece, which we also touched on in the panel, is that as we see access increase and efficiency increase, we're going to see the dynamics and the relationships between clients and attorneys evolve as well. And what I think we're going to see is more ongoing and active relationships, and more attorneys who are really playing more of an advisor role with the business. And this is where the majority of the opportunity is going to come from. Here's some examples illustrating how after industries get disrupted, the opportunity grows 4 times, 6 times. So I think one firm that's doing a fantastic job of embracing the changes and being different is Modus Law. And they're based out of Boulder, Colorado. And Sean Stigler is their partner. And before starting Modus Law, back in September of 2013, Sean was at SW&B. He was a partner. And they were experiencing pretty stagnant growth. At that point in time, Sean recognized a growing opportunity for a different type of law firm. So he branched off and he started Modus 2.5 years ago. And since then, by embracing technology, Modus has quadrupled in size and quadrupled the revenues. And furthermore, what I think is really fascinating is the impact this has had on the full firm level. So not only is Modus attracting some of the top clients, some of the coolest startups like Law Booth in Boulder, but they are attracting some of the top talent and some of the top young attorneys across the US who are not just great top-tier attorneys, but they're savvy technologists. So I have no doubt that Modus is not only going to survive, but really thrive throughout this changing landscape. So even the big law firms, the giant global law firms like Dentons, some of them at least, are recognizing this change as well. And Dentons, in fact, started their own accelerator program to produce technology. And they've created some technology of their own with the recent announcement of the Global Referral Network. So the fact that big law is embracing this shows that it's really a full spectrum thing. It's not just for the solo practitioners. It's not just for the big law firms. And again, it impacts the Dentons on a full firm level, which is evidenced by the fact that they just merged with Dacheng in China, and they are now the largest law firm in the world. And this isn't happening because Dentons they're not growing because of the model of the past. They're growing because they're choosing to focus on being different and embracing the future. So you don't have to be a huge law firm with a CTO or an accelerator program to thrive in these changes or really to embrace technology. Mary Druetten's done a great job of creating Evolve Law, which makes it very easy for you guys to kind of go out there and find some of this technology. And so the easy way to embrace technology is to sign up as a user, test it out. I know there's some cool tech here, and I'm sure that if you talk to the founders, they'll hook up some free trials. But there's also the opportunity to get involved beyond just being a user. I'm sure, are there any attorneys here who are interested in maybe getting involved with legal tech beyond just being a user, but maybe being an advisor or a team member or an investor? Anyway? Maybe, potentially, okay. So we're not sold yet. But there's big opportunity not only for the lawyers who are embracing technology, but who are willing to be the drivers of this change. And anybody can sign up. I know we talked earlier about how it's important for technology to be easy, easy for these attorneys to use, which we completely agree with. But over the past 10 years, technology has improved dramatically, and not only with ease of use, but also with security and attention to the regulations. And now that we have all of these tools that are really built for attorneys, you can at least get out there and try it out. And lastly, what I'll say is, if you're willing to embrace technology and be open-minded, you will evolve. You will be able to reap the rewards of this massive opportunity, and you won't have to worry about getting displaced. But lastly, if there's no technology out there that you really like and that you think is the solution to the legal industry, I encourage you guys to get out there and start your own and to be the change that you'd like to see in the legal industry. So my name is Willie Ogrzali. I really appreciate you guys listening to my talk on the future of law. Happy to answer any questions if any of you disagree with me after this, or you can email me at willie@lawbooth.com. And quick plug for Congo, sorry, Lawbooth, we rebranded recently. If you use the code EvolveLaw, we're happy to provide $150 in credits towards our platform so you can try it out.
That was awesome.
Thank you so much.